Mark Siljander has over 30 years in America's political arena. He's been a former U.S. Congressman, a U.S. UN Deputy Ambassador, and has traveled the world. He also recently wrote a book, an award-winning bestseller called A Deadly Misunderstanding, in which he chronicles what he calls his personal odyssey of spiritual transformation from his past life to a life now devoted to promoting international peace. He has been publicly recognized for his efforts toward a more just, humane, and peaceful world by former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, and he's also received the Mohandas Gandhi International Peace Award in 1996. His bio says that he's visited more than 130 countries, traveling all around the world to share his message. However, I just learned that Mark and his wife Nancy are just in Hawaii for their first time ever. So I'm not sure if we should be offended by that or say that he saved the best for last. So we'll go with that. But I know that Hawaii has already made a tremendous impact on both of them. And at this time, please give a warm aloha and round of applause for Dr. Mark Siljander.
Well, I got in trouble and I haven't started yet. Thanks, Kim, I think. Oh, such an austere group. Mayors, senators, generals, my dear wife, brothers and sisters, and Ahana, our family together. Yes, I've traveled quite a distance, 130 countries, some 17 times over, and I've never been to Hawaii yet. But you have no problems here. We go where there's problems, high anxiety, and there's no ties. The biggest debate we had this morning, should I put the tie on or off? I mean, this is, I guess this is a little formal for here, isn't it? This is a great country. This is a great state. We visited here, and I must tell you, this is not a political statement. We were in awe of the majesty of what God's done with his crafting hand in this beautiful island. We're traveling to other islands later on today, and we look forward to getting to know Hawaii better. But I must tell you that I was very thankful for Morris and the committee for having the courage to invite someone such as myself to come and address you today. The reason I say that, because yes, I've received awards in my life. I've also received a year and a day prison sentence. So I stand really before you not as a politician from Washington who will issue glowing words of encouragement and false hope, but rather I'm a rather broken person, fractured in most every way one could conceive. So you could say, perhaps, that this is a journey of aloha. And that word, just the word aloha, has impacted Nancy and I in a significant way, and I'm going to tell you why in just a minute. God's really been amazing. Even in the depths of devastation and destruction, when helicopters were flying over our home in Washington, media were peering in our house, looking in the windows with cameras, and Wolf Blitzer was on the television saying, Siljander's in hiding. We can't quite find where he is. And you open up your AOL, and the #1 news story is you. And a photograph, which is about 20 years old, saying, former congressman indicted for terror funding. And you think to yourself, is this real? So yes, this has been a journey of aloha. And I looked up the word because something, as soon as we arrived, was eating at me. Because this aloha, of course I've heard of it before. But when I kept hearing it, aloha, 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 something in my mind said there's something dynamic about this word, and I just can't quite put my fingers on it. I had the blessing of studying the Semitic languages of Hebrew, Arabic, and Aramaic, and have found that these languages have revealed hidden mysteries in the scriptures of the Old Testament, the New Testament, and indeed the Quran. There are so many fights and bitterness and wars and mistrust, particularly post 9/11 with the Muslims, for example. And in my heart, I felt there has to be a way. The Lord is merciful and compassionate, and that's one of the meanings I noted of aloha. He is merciful and compassionate. And if God is merciful and compassionate, he would not have the Abrahamic three, nor the Buddhists, nor the Hindus fighting and mistrusting and hating each other. There must be a key. There must be a secret. There must be something hidden in the ancient languages somewhere that would help unearth the secret. So he's tried experimenting with bringing people together in a peaceful sense. And this is where aloha and the journey of aloha comes in. So what was going on in my mind? Finally, I said, Nancy, this is just yesterday. Do you know what aloha means in Aramaic? Does anyone in this room know what aloha means in Aramaic? It means God. The Eckrich translation of the English from the Aramaic says aloha hundreds of times, spelled exactly in English the same way as you spell aloha. So your word that you say, and what the mayor talked about, the spirit of aloha, you're like saying in the Aramaic, the Spirit of God. This is fantastic. And we're just starting. Not only does it mean God, which should be sufficient, but we are, as a nation and as a world, at war with peace. And what does aloha mean? It means peace. Is that right? I looked up the definition in Wikipedia because I wanted to make sure I had this, at least part of it straight, since I'm such a newbie here. It means peace. But truly, we are always and constantly at war with peace. When I was in Congress and look back at the legacy I left, there was nothing. A few little things here and there you could brag about, but really no significant legacy. We traveled to countries and demanded people do things. We demanded that we, in our arrogance, that we are right and they are wrong. And we are so consumed with rights and wrongs. We are consumed with condemnation and judgment. But what does aloha mean? It means love, if I'm not mistaken. It means compassion, if I'm not mistaken. It means mercy, if I'm not mistaken. It doesn't mean condemnation. It does not mean judgment. It does not mean I'm right and you're wrong. And no wonder there's paralysis in Washington, D.C. Because everyone thinks they're right and the other person is wrong. But what does true aloha, what does true peace in the Aramaic mean? This is stunning. What I'm about to tell you, to my wife and I anyway, is really sending us in our visit here only of a few days in a different course of thinking. When Jesus said in Mark 12:29, when they were trying to trick him about what is the greatest commandment, hoping he'd say one over the other, he said the greatest commandment is what? To love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Isn't aloha love? That's number one. And he said the second is unto the first, part of it, not a second, but unto the first, was what? Love your neighbor as yourself. And guess what in the Aramaic language the second word for love is? Mercy and compassion. So aloha is totally encompassing. The critical loves that Jesus mentioned, saying what the greatest commandments were, to love with affection and mercy and compassion. 3 types of love, all in aloha. So why are we in political paralysis? Why is diplomacy unraveling? Why can't Senator Kerry find peace in the Middle East? We're doing it halfway. Many of us in Congress were believers, at least fancied ourselves as believers. And we thought we had the rights and the wrongs. So yes, we were following the first part of aloha. We loved God, but we did not love our neighbor. Our neighbor were the other party. I was Republican. The Democrats, what was the job? And I love Senator Akaka. I knew him very well for many years, 20-some years. Well, I would hug him in one meeting. I'd be ripping him apart in the next. What a hypocrite. Yeah, I'm a big Jesus man, and how are we going to divide the Democrats? I sat with Newt Gingrich, Tom DeLay, Jack Kemp when we were young, ambitious congressmen, and yes, we would plot and plan how are we going to take over the House, and our party will rule America, and the Republicans will just leave a wonderful legacy. And I was one of the strategists to help do that, and we did, or they did. I was gone at the time, thankfully. Yes, there are believers all over, but if we're only half believers, we're like half-breeds, like the Samaritan. Here's the irony. Jesus said, who's your neighbor? They asked him, who is it? And he said, it's the Samaritan. People say, well, so what? The Samaritans were half Assyrian, who spoke the Aramaic language of Jesus, and Jews, and they were despised and hated by the Jews. The neighbor in the context of the first century was another Jew. But when Jesus said, no, it's not just another Jew, it is also a Samaritan, that was revolutionary. That was contradicting the culture totally. He said, you must love. Now, what does love look like? If we're going to love our wife and our kids and love the people in our own partisan party, that's easy. But what does love really look like? How do I love a Democrat? Right, this is true. But what does love really look like? How does it work in Congress? How do you, when you're attempting to divide the other side, to manipulate, to concoct, attack, create wedges in populations and groups, the pro-life, the anti-life, the gun, the that's our focus, to try to divide people. Is that what Jesus said? Is that what the Great Commandment said, to divide, to manipulate? It was just the opposite. And we wonder why we're failing. We are half believers. We're half-breeds like the Samaritans in a sense. Yes, we love God, but we really hate our neighbor. We despise our neighbor. We manipulate, do anything we can against our neighbor. But if we were to take the meaning of aloha to the next level and have compassion and mercy in our neighbor, things would change. Now, I want to sort of conclude this section just with this thought. So what does love look like? It's right there in 1 Corinthians 13. Every wedding, every pastor reads, love is patient, love is kind. It's not boastful, it's not proud, it doesn't keep a record of wrongs. Have you ever been in diplomacy or politics? We keep a record of wrongs. You did this and you did that. You voted this way, and you voted that way. I saw you, Senator. I know how you voted. And we use it against you. That's not what we're taught. We say we're believers, yet we do the opposite. And we wonder why we're in paralysis. We wonder why things don't work. We wonder why people despise religion, so many people in the world. But Jesus is beyond religion, believe me. So if you're distasteful in religion and have given up, okay, but don't give up on Jesus. If we just knew how to be patient, how to be kind, how to be long-suffering, how to be trustful, how to be hopeful. These are the 7 do's in 1 Corinthians, and how not to be arrogant, how not to be proud, how not to have an agenda, how not to keep, again, a record of wrongs. If we could just do a few of the do's and a few of the don'ts, anything is possible. We have enough hate, we have enough fear, we have enough mistrust everywhere. Let's go where we have love. So I started going to country after country, taking these ideas of the Quran, Arabic, the Aramaic of Jesus, and the Hebrew of the Torah, and sharing with Muslim leaders in particular, particularly post 9/11. And prior to 9/11, I went to Libya and met Gaddafi's regime in the late 90s and started a long-term, quiet relationship that built a dynamic time with Gaddafi's regime and others that I believe helped contribute in the spirit to the rapprochement with Libya. We started buying his oil, building hotels. He denounced weapons of mass destruction. I mean, no one knows what really happened. I can tell you what happened. Aloha happened. It really did. You say, well, that's a coincidence. I said, all right. So then we went to Iraq to see Saddam's regime and did our best. And I remember I'm Republican background. And Dick Cheney and I served together in the Congress when he was a congressman from Wyoming. And I begged him that we really didn't have to go to war. We had some issues there. And I was not looked on too kindly, more or less as a traitor to several entities in the government. So they told me and ordered me to stand down even though I'm no longer in government, or else. So I went to Sudan instead. There was Darfur. I mean, it was tragic, ladies and gentlemen. I've been to Darfur 3 times, Sudan about 16 or 17 times in 5 years. It's not a pleasant trip. I met Omar al-Bashir, the president who's been indicted for genocide. We became prayer partners. I know it sounds completely contrary to what we should be doing. But sanctions didn't work. Bombings didn't work. So I tried aloha, compassion, mercy, love, peace. Darfur was horrific. I did not go with an agenda, just as a prayer partner. He thought I was a little crazy at first. But then he kept inviting me back over and over to speak to this university and that university and this group. Before I knew it, we had the key to the country. All right, so what's the upshot of praying with our diabolical enemy, Omar al-Bashir? I don't want to get into details, don't have time, but peacekeepers were deployed indeed to Darfur. Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, who was Buddhist, by the way, he and I became, I don't mean this in any arrogance, close friends, because what he saw is the Aloha Jesus strategy work. He wrote the foreword to my book. It took him 3 months to get approval to do it. And why would he go to so much trouble? Not because I'm good looking, as you can see, but rather he saw aloha, peace, compassion, mercy, love, everything Jesus talked about work with the complex matrix of politics, Muslims, Christians, Darfur, genocide, rape. Think of this. And it worked. And he said, Mark, where else can it work? Well, it works all over. Both Congos, both wars were ended within weeks of engaging aloha. But no one knows this. This is behind the scenes. You remember those 2 girls in Iran who were going to be beheaded about 3.5 years ago for converting to Christianity? They've had recent tours in the United States. They've written books. Well, no one knows how they got released. Aloha was used with the Iranians. Iranians? You communicate with the Iranians? Yes. Jesus said to love our enemy, and love doesn't mean like. Does it say that in 1 Corinthians 13? There's no likes or agree with necessarily. It's just, again, long-suffering. No arrogance, no agenda. It works, aloha, over and over. There was fallout because, as I started earlier, there were helicopters over our house. And the AOL came up with terror funding. Yes, I was involved with Muslims here and abroad, all over the world. This was the most dynamic, exciting work I've ever done. Ambassador, nothing. Congressman, with all due respect to senators and others here, for me, the most powerful part of our life was post all of the officials, but it gave the credentials necessary. I asked God, why would you let me go through all these years of politics? And for what? It was to credential one to move on. So our son and others that I see are interested in politics, I want to encourage them to run for office. But do it with real aloha. You say that won't work. I have seen it work everywhere. And it works in families. What happened to us, now I'm going to go from the grandeur of palaces to the dehumanizing prisons before I conclude. So here we have an indictment tying me to terrorism, funding terrorism, which is so absurd, it's like I can't hardly believe it. Well, it wasn't quite what I was charged with, but that's what the media presented, because that's what they were told. Certain elements were very angry with what I was doing because we were making success. Things were actually happening. Wars were ended. But I wasn't trying to rough up the U.S. foreign policy. I was trying to be a servant and support it quietly, without arrogance and behind the scenes. But it wasn't seen that way. But I'm not bitter about it. We went through 4.5 years of losing everything. House, reputation, everything we felt important. My reputation. I could travel and see presidents and leaders. Now I'm completely trashed. You Google my name, ooh, it's still. I mean, it's horrible. I'm surprised that I was invited anywhere. But you can't always believe what you read on Google. Our children, our son in high school was kicked out of high school because he beat up a couple kids saying your dad's a terrorist. We had people in India emailing, Mark, what are you doing? South Africa. I mean, this was a worldwide news, not for long, but long enough to cause huge damage to everything we hold dear. Our bank accounts closed. Our credit cards shut down. Traveling was almost impossible, harassed. And after 4.5 years and threats of constant re-indictments for another 4.5 years, and threats of my trips to all these countries, Libya, Sudan, Iraq before the war, and other places, finally we threw in the towel and said, all right, I'll take a year and a day rather than 15 years, which would probably have been the ultimate result if I kept fighting. And who knows how many more years. We were crushed. Our kids were all imploding. Now I'm bringing it down to home, to the ahana, to the family. It's tough. I beg God to end it. I don't know how you can beg God more with tears, begging, pounding, pleading. I spoke in Hebrew, Aramaic. I spoke in every language I knew, begging God to end it. Finally, I was standing in a courtroom, and the judge said a year and a day. For what? For lying to the FBI and not registering as a lobbyist. I was the first one to be charged with the lobbyist and succeed. In 40 years, no one has been convicted but me. Yeah. So I felt, well, I'll probably just go to a camp near our home. We lived in Florida at the time. They sent us 1,100 miles away to a pedophile, high-level security prison with barbed wire, 93 years old prison that held Nazi POWs. Now, I'm not playing the violin. I'm just trying to explain to you that life can go up and life can go down very, very deeply into the pit. Cockroaches, rats, asbestos, lead paint, food not fit for human consumption. I begged God to send me to a camp. I said, please, Lord, it seemed like my prayers weren't being answered. I said, we could go over the world and alter history here and there, but I can't even alter my own life. It was devastating. I said, where are you, God? Where are you? The nude searches, and everyone told me, 2 paid consultants that my friends were generous enough, because we were broke, to pay for, say, whatever you do, don't tell me you're a congressman. They will kill you or stab you at minimum just to say they did it. And if you say you work with Muslims, the skinheads, the swastika, the neo-Nazis, they'll kill you. But they sent me to a pedophile prison. If you're mid-aged, white, with your teeth and no tattoos, you're a pedophile. So I either tell them I'm a pedophile or a politician. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. So I went against all advice. 3 of my friends had been to prison. So, Mark, don't tell him you're a politician. My God, don't tell him that. So I brought 4 of my books in, had them shipped in, handed them out, said, I'm a former congressman, I work with Muslims. What was the upshot? I want to leave you with 3 thoughts. The first one is, aloha is the way. The second one is, no matter what comes your way, if you focus on aloha, the real love that we talked about, not this Kissiagi necessarily, but the real love of God and love of your neighbor, both. The love of your family, your strange children, your strange husband or wife. If you focus on it, God is faithful. God is faithful. I had doubts many times along these 4.5 years before I went to prison for 1 year and a day. And when I met the skinheads, bald with swastikas all over their body, and the Latino gangs with tattoos even on their eyelids, and what they call the gangbangers, the inner city people, I thought, my gosh, I'm going to get pummeled here. It's going to be terrible. But handing out the books, you know what it did? It did just the opposite. And it had nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the spirit of aloha, Mayor. Everything to do with the Spirit of God, of peace, of love, of mercy and grace. We had many revivals in the prison, so much the captain of the security called us in to his office. What are you doing? I said, I'm praying with inmates. But you're bringing skinheads, Latinos, and African Americans together, and they're praying. I said, this is a religious riot. Your ideas are dangerous, Siljander. I said, how are they dangerous? He says, you're banned from speaking at the chapel. You're banned from teaching in the educational department. You are banned from deeply mentoring inmates. Inmates need a father, I told them. They have no father. They need a father. Figured I'm old and I can embrace these young guys. I had a guy from the mountains of Virginia, no teeth from methamphetamines. He shot his uncle with a shotgun, beat his dad up with a bat. His wife and both his sons were in prison. He comes into my cell weeping, saying, Mark, you're a Jesus guy. He didn't say I was a Christian. I'm not against Christianity. But I said, I didn't talk Christianity, didn't talk religion, just Jesus talk. So he comes into my cell and says, crying, said, I need something. I said, what do you need? I don't know. You tell me. I said, you just need the Holy Spirit. Aloha. He goes, okay. And by the way, at the end, aloha, the ha part, means life or spirit in Aramaic. So you've got a double meaning here. Isn't that exciting? I mean, this is so great to be here, I can't tell you. I love it here. Is it hard to get a house here? Oh, never mind. Anyway, so we lay hands and pray for this brother. And he started crying and said, you know, I've had no father. They haven't visited me in 2.5 years, my family. He said, let's just pray in the name of Jesus and see what happens. Within a week, I'm in the visiting room with my wife, and this whole group comes walking in. He comes walking all disheveled, hadn't any anticipation his family was there and visited him. He said, Mark, this is a miracle. I had a guy from the inner city tell me he was going to kill his 3rd baby mama, shoot her in the face for turning him in. So I said, why are you sitting on my toilet in my cell telling me all this? He said, I don't know. They always say, I don't know. I said, well, you need Jesus. He said, well, give it to me. So he prayed for him. He was walking on his toes for weeks. I said, why are you so happy? He said, because I'm not going to go home. I'm not going to kill my 3rd baby mama. I'm going to go and love them all just like Jesus would. I mean, in the skinheads, can you imagine Nazis praying with African Americans and Latinos and the Buddhists? They had a little gang. The head of the gang was a kickboxer. You know the guys in the television, the cage fighters? And he had a long braid down to here, and they're doing push-ups, and we're walking on this 1/4-mile track around and around in circles. 1 hour with the Jews, the next hour with the Muslims, the next hour with the Buddhists, the next hour with the Christians, the next hour with the black guys, every hour there'd be movements because we were in high security. So all the things that you could say, the Bible said what the devil meant for evil, God will turn for good. Well, that scripture is true. So the Buddhist guy say, hey, oh, thank you. Praise the Lord. The Buddhist guy say, come over here, Siljander. If you can do more push-ups than me and I'm the leader. He goes, ha, ha, ha. He's going like showing me his kickboxing. I mean, this is bizarre stuff. Prison is, I know many of you haven't been there and I don't advise it, but it's very interesting. He said, come on, old man, stop talking about Jesus and get over here and do some push-ups. I said, I could beat any of you guys. You're all a bunch of punks. Ah! I mean, this guy, they're all getting their poses. Oh, come on, if you don't beat us, you're going to be in real trouble. Oh, my buddy said, oh, my gosh, Siljander, you're going to get killed. I said, no, everything's fine. So they put this huge weight on my back. Flat on the grass. Can you imagine this? In a prison yard, flat on my stomach, with this big weight on my back. And I was supposed to do 8 push-ups. I said, no problem. I tried to do one, and oh, my whole arms are shaking with one. And no. I just prayed. I said, Lord, you've been answering prayers in a very circuitous fashion lately. But can you answer this prayer? I did 10. The Buddhist guys go, okay. And then we sat down, hey, tell us about the Dalai Lama. We could see the books, my books, 20 copies by this time were floating all over the campus. And there's a chapter in there about meeting with the Dalai Lama. So we sat for week after week talking about Jesus with the Buddhist gangs, Vietnamese gangs. So is Jesus just for Muslims? No. Christians? No. Buddhists? It's for everyone. In the JP Hotel, Jesus is for all those people. And we all need Jesus. Okay, I'm about to conclude, but I want to tell you, I was called in by the doctor. You serve about 4.5 months in the federal system. The judge did me a favor, a year and a day. The day gives me like almost half the time off. So I'm about ready to be released. And I said, I have good news and bad news, Siljander. said, great. What's the good news? You're being released in 2 weeks. I said, I know that. What's the bad news? He said, you're going to die in about 3 months. I'm serious. I said, no, this is a joke, isn't it? No. We did a biopsy on that bump in your body. It's a rhabdoid sarcoma. No one has survived beyond 6 months. You've had it for 10. It's already a miracle, and you're going to die. I thought we had hit bottom. Indictment, humiliation, prison, now cancer, now death. Whew. Life can be up and life can go down quickly. I extended prison 5 months voluntarily. I had a year so I could go up to the year. Why? Because we had no resources. And Obamacare, like it or not, covers pre-existing conditions, and it wasn't in place yet. So I voluntarily went to a prison hospital where I was treated. And by the way, the commander called me in the first day and said, Siljander, you are not doing here what you did in Petersburg, Virginia. You leave these inmates alone. Now, you think that happened? The dying. I was in a cancer for 200 inmates, almost all of whom were dying. The calling was not so much for deliverance of one thing or another, but simply preparation for the kingdom with hundreds of inmates, with mob figures, while we're getting treatments. God is faithful. Aloha is the way. In love, or aloha conquers all fears. So, ladies and gentlemen, when I heard at Duke University in North Carolina about a month ago, after 18 months post-surgery, I am cancer-free, and I'm the only person they know of to survive. Praise the Lord. Why? I think just to be here is one certainty in our life. It's been great. I really do love you. The time here has been more than warm and hospitable. The people are fantastic, and we have several more days to go. I just want to leave you with these 3 critical points. Aloha is the way. Aloha overcomes fear, and God is faithful. This is true. And all I know for the future is going to be good, powerful, and dynamic. And we're just looking for a few people to be on this journey of aloha together. If you're interested, and I don't have anything in particular in mind, I mean just journeying as family, let me know. Mahalo. God bless you. And aloha.
Thank you, Dr. Siljander. What an inspiring message.